Welcome to the Business Development Podcast, brought to you by the Global Business Development Association, delivering the strategies and tactics to boost your career and corporate growth.
Okay, welcome everyone, and to all business development professionals to the Business Development Podcast from the Global Business Development Association. And our podcast is, What is Business Development? That's the name of our podcast because so many people ask that question. And it's fantastic to have a fantastic author and guest of a wonderful book on business development that I think everybody will really enjoy. And before we get to that, it's, if you're wondering, hey, how do I become a business development professional? How do I break into the field of business development? Well, you've come to the right place at the Global Business Development Association. We have the business development body of knowledge with in-depth tactics, operations, and strategy about the business development profession. That document enables you to then take the certification exam for the business development professional online certification. It's unlimited attempts. It's a way for you to build the competency and the credibility to enter the field. And then even if you're a seasoned veteran in the business development field, we have a number of folks that have completed the BDP certification that are even the VP level in the business development profession, and they have 5-star reviews for going through that process. And we welcome new folks and seasoned veterans to the show. Learn more at gbdassociation.org. So let's move on now to talking about our guest, Akilan A P. He's a seasoned leader with over a decade of experience in revenue operations and sales development, specializing in driving revenue growth through innovative, data-driven strategies. His expertise spans optimizing sales processes, leading high-performing teams, and implementing scalable solutions that align with company objectives. And I tell you what, he talks all about it in his brand new book. I read it. It's called Leaders, Not Rockstars. It's a very well-written book. I love the structure of it. As an author, I always admire other authors that can clearly and concisely present the material in actionable methods. And that's what Akilan does in all 266 pages of his book, Leaders, Not Rockstars. It's for those who build teams, not just pipelines. And, look, if you're sick of the sales world's obsession with lone wolf rock stars who burn bright and flame out faster, right? Yeah, I'm sure you've seen a couple of those if you're out there, veteran BD folks. Leaders Not Rockstars is your no BS guide to building BDR teams. Those are business development representative teams, if you're new to the field, that deliver results without the ego trips and revolving doors. With a blend of sharp humor and forward-thinking strategies, this book flips outdated sales culture on its head. Learn how to foster a collaborative, empowered team where everyone wins without relying on a few prima donnas to save the day. And every step of that book, I was really impressed, Akilan, with how you wrote the book so that it's written not just for the business development leaders to learn how to optimize their teams, but it's also a great text for those that are entering the field. You want to start off as a BDR, or maybe you're coming over from maybe operations and you're going right to a director, a BD role. This is one of the best books I've read in BD and very helpful for folks in both categories. So Akilan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tony. Loved the intro. I think that is all that matters, right? End of the day, if another author loves how you write, I think that's the biggest gift you can get or the compliment you can get for the book that you write.
Well, I don't even know if my intro did it justice. It's that good. So I'd love to jump into this. First off, let's start off with talking about your origin story. Why did you write the book? I think I know the answer because I read the book and I know what you're digging at to try and solve, but I always love to hear it from the author's perspectives.
Well, absolutely. Giving some context before I go into why I wrote the book, right? So when I started off looking for a role as the BD manager, the book that I read was by Trish Petrucci, and it was on the sales development playbook. And I realized 2016, if I remember right, is when that book was written. If that book helped me crack a role 4 years later, despite all the changes that are happening in the BD world, is there a place where people can reference for the current age BD world? So that was the starting point of all these thoughts. And luckily for me, I managed to take a career break. I authored a couple of handbooks to test out how the appetite is for books like this. So I wrote one on 101 probing questions, and another one more, what do you say on a call? So these two handbooks that I authored, and I realized, hey, you know what? There's a lot of potential for something like this in the market. And sat down, put my heads down to, use my break to write something that is useful for people.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you cut out there a little bit.
No worries. So I said, use this time that I took as a break to put my heads down and write something that other people in the market looking for a role in the BD world might find useful. So that's the origin of why this entire book came into existence.
Yeah, I like that. And tell us, some of the ways where, when you were in that role of a BD leader, give us a couple of stories that really kind of resonated with you and kind of drove you to move forward with the book.
Absolutely. I think you kind of addressed the elephant in the room when you said why I wrote that book. Specifically because there are so many influencers out there on the social media today who probably picked up the phone a decade back, teaching people how to do sales. However, the reps who listen to those and expect those to happen on calls for them, that kind of struck their entire belief system, and they were like, hey, you know what, I've tried everything that I can read on the internet or on LinkedIn, none of it works for me, right? So when all these started to happen within my team as well, we realized that every country, every region, every product, every buyer persona that you sell to work differently. And this is one thing I learned myself when I was selling into the US. I loved selling into California because people call BS, right? They want to buy, they say, yes, let's get on a call. If not, no, don't waste my time. The same way, if you go a little to the central, I'm going to get called out for bringing the states here. But when I tried calling into Texas, people love talking. I saw a lot of people talk to me, but none of those moved into actual business conversations, right? So generalizing something that is working for you to expect it to work for everybody else, I think that hit the chord, right? So that's where, when we sat down as a team, we started to learn more about the nuances of the region that we're targeting, the buyer persona that we're targeting, and the problem that we are trying to solve. So I think that was the first big revelation for me, where I realized no point just following someone. You need to know who you're talking to, who you're selling to, right? And I also felt that with all these gyan out there, or all these ideas and teachings that are out there in the world, there's very little for a media to pick and choose which one to look for. Today, I would say pick up the phone, dial 100 calls a day, and probably you would pick up the phone and you would tell them, pick up the phone, make 20 calls, ensure that 5 of them pick up, right? And the BD just goes lost in this world. They're like, hey, I have 1,000 people telling me 1,000 different ways to do this. Tell me what to do.
Yeah, well, so a couple of things to unpack there from that great overview is how you personalize to the different markets, to the different product sets. And the other thing too is how you have this approach of mini contracts, if you will. I talk about it in the business development body of knowledge, in the methodology called Nurture Intent Cycles of Engagement, which basically says, look, it's easy to get into a relationship with a prospect where you're providing value, but you're not getting anything in return. It's not moving. You're not moving the needle. You're not getting any momentum. You're not making any progress. So you really have to have these little mini contracts that say, look, I'm giving you value. I mean, if you're doing business development right, you're not badgering the prospect, you're not annoying them, you're actually delivering legitimate value in the relationship. And so there should be reciprocity. If there's no reciprocity, then where are you going? If you're giving them value and then you ask for mini contracts, okay, well, let's talk about this more at our next meeting. Let's explore this concept, or hey, I just found out this piece of information I think is very relevant for you. And there's no reciprocity, then okay, it's fine. Because you will not have those Californians that you talked about, right? Who tell you right up front, hey, look, I'm not interested. I appreciate the value you're giving me, but today's not the day. This is not the right time. So, and that's good. You want clients to be that candid, but oftentimes they're either nice or for a multitude of reasons, and you're just not making any progress. So, okay, so let's jump into this, Akilan, because I always like to ask our author guests, what are the top 3 tactical takeaways from your book? And it is jam-packed with actionable insights. So I know it's going to be difficult for you to pick the top 3, but let's start with number 1. What's number 1 for your top tactic?
Interesting. So again, context to why this is number 1. This is something my mentor taught me, right? Just like how we were talking about people, different region, different people think differently. There is one thing that's common. Everybody thinks the problem is the one that needs the solution for. Nobody really goes about what lies underneath the problem. So the first tactic is there is always a need behind the need. When someone says, I have this problem, there is something else that's instigating that problem. So that's the first thing I would probably put, because I want BDRs and SDRs to talk about why a problem exists. What have they done to solve the problem today? And what is the implication of the problem today? If we do not know all of these, then we are just addressing the surface level issue. And most often than not, that's a short set, right? It's transactional. You will probably end up winning or closing that deal for that moment. A year later, they might churn, right? So my first one is on, there is always a need behind the need.
Yes. And it all gravitates around purpose. What's the purpose? Where is the customer trying to go? They're trying to solve some sort of pain point. They're trying to solve some sort of issue. They're trying to get from point A to point B. If you can't get them to point B, then why are you both talking? So I love how you start with this, because that is a fundamental component of building trust with your prospects, is purpose, a common shared sense of purpose. If you don't share purpose, then there's no trust. There's no point in talking anymore. So I like how you address the problem. And then it seems like there are 3 tactical takeaways in that one takeaway, because you talk about, okay, look, address the problem, know how you solve it, have your proof points to show credibility on how you solved that before. And really give them the sense of trust and confidence that you can get them to a place where you have successfully done it and you know how to do it. So really like that. Okay, so let's now jump to your...
Tony, I'm going to stop you there. Just going to give you one small additional point to this, right? So when I was part of my previous org, there was one BDR who was on a call with a client trying to solve a problem. And we realized that the platform that we have does not cater to the core problem yet. So I was stunned that the BDR said, hey, you know what? You should probably look at these 3 platforms. They solve your core. The biggest thing that we learned from that is I think a quarter later, this same prospect came back to us, bought our platform, and also ended up being our champion in the entire region, saying, I'm going to take your product out to the HR leaders there. So
wow.
Sometimes it is just that small act that can go a long, long, long way.
Yeah. Hey, Akilan, I got to tell you, folks listening, if you're watching, we did not script this, but Akilan, you're hitting another key point. And I'll tell you what, this is where I say business developers are different than salespeople. Okay. Yeah. And exactly what you said. We are advocates for our prospects and for our clients. That's our mission. And so again, when we talk about how do you build trust, and this is proven by neuroscience, trust consists of 3 things: purpose, empathy, and truth. Okay, it spells P-E-T, pet, a simple mnemonic to try and remember it, but trust equals purpose, empathy, and truth. And we just talked about how purpose is so important. We talked about empathy, understanding their problem, but here's the thing, here's the kicker. Truth, and this is what you'll find probably a lot of salespeople are not comfortable doing, is having that advocate's mindset to say, you know what, I'm going to tell you the truth. I heard your problem, and I'm being empathetic here and telling you the truth, which is, hey, we're probably not the right solution for you. And just to see that particular customer's response is a testament to how powerful that mechanism is, because that's why as business developers, we build a long-term relationship with that prospect became, like, as you said, one of your biggest champions, right? And so that is the ultimate mission of business development. That's why we are here. The definition of business development is customer and community advocacy that creates corporate growth. And I tell you, Akilan, you just dropped gold right there. And just, again, folks, we did not rehearse this. We did not prep beforehand talking about these stories, but Akilan just walked through chapter 2, the brand trust flywheel in the BD Bach. And, so our mission is customer and community advocacy that creates corporate growth. So our whole mission is to do exactly what Akilan just said, is be purposeful, empathetic, and truthful with a prospect. They become a client and they become your biggest champion, right? So that whole definition of BD, customer and community advocacy that creates corporate growth, is a double entendre, right? We're advocates for them. So ultimately they become advocates for us. And then, I tell people there's no more valuable and powerful business developer than your free business developers. And people look at me, what are you talking about? Free business developers? They're your customers. They're your happy customers who rave about you. So Akilan, wow. Okay. Tactic number 1, knocked it out of the park. Can we jump to tactic number 2, or do you have more packed in there?
We'll go into the next one. So I think this is again a problem where we see meetings set up, opportunities on the pipeline, but they don't generally close, or you struggle during the negotiation phase. Typically, this happens because of one specific reason, which is we do not establish the cost of inaction. You do not speak to your customer or your prospect about what would happen if you don't challenge status quo today. And that's one of the other big findings that I realized in my own career as a BD. The moment you have a cost of inaction, that simple cost that you're talking about there is your exact number that you're going to talk about on the negotiation table. You want to save $5,000 at the cost of losing $1 million in business, it's your call. It makes negotiations so much easier. And more often than not, I also realized that if you're not able to establish cost of inaction with a prospect, it means that they are not clear on what they want to solve for. So that would be the second one, establishing cost of inaction as early as possible in the pipeline.
All right. I love it. So let's unpack that one a little bit, if we could, Akilan. Let's see here. And before I jump right into unpacking number 2, I'm going to keep people in suspense here. We have a giveaway for a free business development professional certification. And that includes the free access to the digital business development body of knowledge, of course, our learning portal, and the exam. So folks, if you're in the chat session, and if you're on LinkedIn, or if you're just in the StreamYard live stream, go ahead and enter the letters BDP, B as in boy, D as in Delta, P as in Papa. Go ahead and enter that in the chat log. Again, it should work if you're on LinkedIn. I'm still a little new with this giveaway tool, so we'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work, Akilan. But we'll play with that a little bit at the end of this. And okay, so let's jump back right into tactic 2. We'll unpack that one. Okay, so what you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, Akilan, is tactic number 2 is define what quantify that pain for them of what would happen if they did not move forward with you. And again,
Not just with us, it could also mean if they do not solve the problem that they're talking about.
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah. So tactic number 2 is quantify for the prospect what happens if they do not solve the problem.
Yeah.
And so I like how you move from tactic 1 to tactic 2. Tactic 1, okay, let's talk about the problem. Let me tell you how we've solved the problem before. And then the tactic number 2 is, okay, now that we've done that, let's talk about, okay, so what happens if you don't do this? What are the consequences? And that really cements kind of an if-then scenario in the prospect's mind. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong too, it kind of gives you an entree into talking about timetables, right? So what happens if you don't solve it today? What happens if you don't solve it 3 months from now or a year from now? I'm just kind of riffing on that tactic number 2, but what are your thoughts on that, Akilan? Is kind of talking, okay, consequence, time frame.
Yeah, I mean, see, again, if you look at all the things that we're talking about, it's usually the same old wine in a new bottle. However, the world requires a new bottle today. We keep saying band, right? You speak about budget, you speak about authority, you speak about need, you speak about timeline. I think the world has changed a bit. If you have established the need and you've established the consequence of not working on the need, budget and authority will fall in place automatically. So instead of running behind, hey, who should I be talking to? Do you really want to solve this problem? When can I get back to you? You're literally telling them, hey, it's your call. You want to solve that problem today? Let's solve it today. You want to solve it 12 months later? It's your business problem, right? Not mine.
Yes, I love this. And I often use an analogy of business developers are like lifeguards. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We're not the police. We can't make you come with us. Okay. So at my job as the business developer is, my job is to run out there when you're in distress, when you have a problem, swim to you and offer my assistance. Come with me, don't come with me. That's fine. I have other people to save. Okay. So let's move this along. Come with me, don't come with me. I'm not the cops. And so I think it's great. And that type of candor, it also helps build more trust with the prospect. And again, going back to tactic number 1 of, okay, if you don't want to come with me, then at least you should, maybe consider these other potential solutions for you. Because sometime you're going to come back to me in our relationship, in our pathways, and you will have appreciated my candor and my empathy to look out for you, not look out for the corporate self-interest. So I like how tactic 1, tactic 2 kind of dovetail together. Okay, let's jump into tactic number 3.
Yeah, so I think you called it out right. First, establishing the need, then there is a timeline. The third one is ensuring people are ready to put the money in, right? So here, the third tactic is ensuring that there is a leadership buy-in, not on the solution, but on the problem first. Most often than not, I've seen an executive, a manager, a director say, this is the problem I want to solve. You take it to the C-suite and say, hey, you know what? Your BD director wanted to solve this problem. They're like, oh, I don't think that problem exists in my company. That is the third tactic, establishing a leadership buy-in on the problem as early as possible.
Okay, so tactic number 3 is getting the leadership buy-in as early as possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not on the solution, but on the problem.
On the problem. That's a great distinction. I'm glad you clarified that. Is get the executive, the senior leader, the decision maker, their buy-in on the problem, not necessarily the solution. So I like that. And so, that kind of brings together all 3 tactics together. Identify the problem, quantify what happens if you don't address the problem. And then thirdly, let's get the decision maker involved here and have them agree to the problem. And so I like how you pull all 3 of these together. I know we have about 5 more minutes left on the clock here, Akilan. And with that, Again, folks, if you want a free access to the BDP certification, just type in the chat box or the comment section the letters BDP. I may have a technical issue on the back end with my giveaway tools. So, but try and type those in there. If you're in the chat log, you're having a technical issue, let me know. But Akilan, let's touch on the book a little bit too, because we do have a few extra minutes here. And I want to make sure that we get folks a good, clear understanding of what this book is. So I'd like to hear in your words, if you're a BD leader, why should you read the book?
Interesting. So I'm going to answer this in two parts. If you're a BD, why should you read this book? Because answering that first, the world of sales is changing with AI coming in. There is multiple different things happening in the market. Unless you have a great platform to understand the basics of BD, it's not going to help you adopt these technologies that's available for you. So as a BD, if you want to excel in what you're doing, leave the monotonous work with AI, leave the monotonous work with automation, be the human being that you're supposed to be for this. As a BD leader, why would I want you to read this book? Simply put, I don't want you to read it because there are BD tactics here. I don't want you to read because there is a lot of frameworks that's thrown out here. I want you to read this book because BDRs or the reps need your support. And if you do not understand how their world is today, you're not going to solve for their anxiety. You're not going to solve for their motivation. You're not going to solve for their excitement to do their job day in, day out. So that's probably why BDR leaders should read this book.
Yeah, and that's what really resonated with me when I read the book is as a BD leader, we talked about some great tactics today, but as the great warrior philosopher Sun Tzu once said, tactics are nothing more than the noise before defeat. And so as leaders, we need to be coaches and mentors. And I'll tell you, I've read a lot of business books, and they're kind of high level fluff. There are these high level concepts that are typically everybody's already heard of before. But what I really liked about your book is, first of all, it's very specific to business development. There are not many business development books in there. So I was really excited to see this come to press. And then it really goes into detail on tactics, but also on how to structure the team, how to optimize the team, how to coach the team, how to mentor the team. And there's a lot that goes into being a BD leader, not to take anything away from marketing and sales, but we are right between the two of them. Marketing is in the awareness phase. Sales is in the conversion phase. We sit right in the middle. And I would argue that we do the most human part of that. And so I like how you say AI is coming, folks, and it is coming in fast. And if you are executing a transactional function, marketing or sales, those are very transactional. They're very important, don't get me wrong, but they are very transactional. And as we know from the power of AI, if you have transactional activities, those are perfectly suited for artificial intelligence. The human part, the face-to-face, the handshake, the purpose, the empathy, the truth, that comes from human engagement. Nobody wants to give $10 million to a robot. Okay. That's a big deal. That's a make or break decision for your career. And you want to make sure that the person that's on the other line can deliver. You can trust that they will be your advocates so that someday when they solve your problem, they solve your decision maker's problem, you become their biggest champion. And so, Akilan, fantastic podcast that talks about a lot of the critical principles of business development success. I think we teased enough folks about really what's inside your book. I think the write-ups in Amazon don't even do it justice. If you're a BD leader, you need to get this book. If you're a future BDR, an existing BDR, get this book. It'll help you understand key tactics, what goes through the minds of your BD leaders. And hey, if your BD leader needs a little help, it may be a way to maybe give them a copy of the book and, not to be passive aggressive, but hey, this is an interesting book. Maybe the whole team should read it, boss. But it's definitely for everybody that's on the BD team. You need to read this and get a copy of his book. So Akilan, please.
Yeah, on that note, Tony, I'm going to make the book available free of cost, the Kindle version of it, for the next 24 hours, starting tonight Pacific time to tomorrow night Pacific time. So 24 hours, the Kindle version of the book is going to be available on Amazon for free.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you. That's very generous for our audience. Again, if you're a business developer, you need to get out and get this free copy. You only have 24 hours, so jump on that. Akilan, thank you so much for coming today to the podcast. That's what is business development? I think today you gave us a little bit clearer picture of what that really means. And again, thank you so much for your generosity and your contributions to the art, science, and ethics of the business development profession. Thank you.
So much, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Business Development Podcast. Join our free community of corporate partners and business development professionals advancing the art, science, and ethics of the business development profession at gbdassociation.org.